Hey guys, it's Emmanuel Manning, another video. Hope you guys are doing well. So why don't I give a little bit of an overview of the different Hobgoblins. I know the Hobgoblin has a very complicated history just because so many different characters have taken on the mantle of the Hobgoblin. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a video on the different Hobgoblins, right? Some of the different characters, right? And it's an overview, right? I'm not going to give too much details on each character, but give enough information to understand them a little bit. And then go over some of the key issues in terms of these each characters and Hobgoblins. Okay, right. So let's get started with the first Hobgoblin, which is Roderick Kingsley. Okay, so Roderick Kingsley is this kind of plotting fashion designer, greedy fashion designer who first appears in Spectacular Spider-Man 43. Right. Later on, we learn that he gains access to the Green Goblin's lairs, right? Norman Osborn's lairs. And then he finds his equipment, right? He learns about the Goblin Serum through his journal, through his investigation and looking at the journals. So he eventually becomes a criminal mastermind, right? He wants to rule the underworld, right? He's kind of a very successful fashion designer, built a little bit of wealth. And now he wants to kind of rule the underworld, okay, as the Hobgoblin. And here's some key issues. So Spectacular Spider-Man, right? Peter Parker. Our run, number 43, his first appearance, Roderick Kingsley. Right, we can also see him on the cover. Amazing Spider-Man 238, his first appearance as the Hobgoblin. His first battle with Spider-Man would be Amazing Spider-Man 239. And then when he first gains his superhuman strength power, right, would be Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, number 85. Right, very undervalued book, I feel. Right, but there's first a second Hobgoblin, right? So Roderick Kingsley, before he gains his superhuman strength, he actually tests the serum on another character, which is the second Hobgoblin, Donovan Lefty. Okay, so Donovan Lefty is this petty criminal, which is basically a lab rat for Roderick Kingsley, right? So he wants to carefully monitor Donovan Lefty as the Hobgoblin to see if there's any side effects, right? Because the Goblin Serum did have side effects, right? We learned that through Norman Osborn, right? And his badness. So once Roderick Kingsley is done with Donovan Lefty, right? Donovan Lefty has a big battle with Spider-Man. He's defeated, right? He has him killed, right? Oops. And these are kind of the two key issues. Amazing Spider-Man 244, right? The first appearance of Donovan Lefty as the second Hobgoblin, and then, right, his last appearance is Amazing Spider-Man 245. Okay. So very short-lived run, right? And then we have the third Hobgoblin, which is Ned Leeds. Okay, so Ned Leeds is a longtime Spider-Man supporting character, right? He's the husband to Betty Brant, right? He's another supporting character in the Spider-Man series. He could be we learn that he's an abusive husband later on, especially with his jealousy, especially with Flash Thompson and Betty Brant's relationship. Although we do learn that through Roderick Kingsley, right, his constant brainwashing and drugging of Ned Leeds might contribute to him lashing out at Betty Brant. Right, so I kind of already alluded to this, right? Roderick Kingsley brainwashes Ned Leeds to become the Hobgoblin. So Roderick Kingsley learns that Ned Leeds is trailing him, right? So he decides to brainwash and use Ned Leeds as a stand-in, right? Just because he still wants to infiltrate the criminal underworld, but he doesn't want to be, put himself at harm, right? So he uses Ned Leeds as a stand-in. So Ned Leeds is eventually murdered by the Foreigner's men, right? The Foreigner is another villain in the Spider-Man series, on the orders of Jason Macendale, right? So Jason Macendale is the Jack-o'-lantern, the first Jack-o'-lantern, right? Who feels betrayed by the Hobgoblin. So he eventually, pays the Foreigner to kill off Ned Leeds. Right? And then here are some of the key issues associated with Ned Leeds, right? So his first appearance is Amazing Spider-Man number 18. His first appearance as the Hobgoblin, the third Hobgoblin, is Amazing Spider-Man 257. And then his death, right, when he's killed by the Foreigner's men, is Amazing Spider-Man 289. The whole brainwashing details that I provided, right, a lot of this is summarized in Spider-Man Hobgoblin Lives number 3. So it kind of gives us an origin of the brainwashing of Ned Leeds. Right? And here are a few bonus books, right? This is when the Rose, right? The Rose and Ned Leeds Hobgoblin worked very closely together. So we kind of have an origin of that relationship. Web of Spider-Man number 30. And then you gotta love comics, right? Ned Leeds did not stay there, right? He eventually comes back, and then he reveals how he came back in the Amazing Spider-Man 68. Right, so some bonus books. Right, the fourth Hobgoblin. So I kind of already mentioned Jason Macendale, right? A little bit. So Jason Macendale is a former mercenary, right? He was an amoral type of mercenary, ruthless. So he eventually becomes the costume terrorist known as the Jack-o'-lantern. Okay, he has many clashes, right, with Machine Man and mostly Spider-Man, and then eventually the Hobgoblin, right? So Jason Macendale, you know, as the Jack-o'-lantern, he feels betrayed by the Hobgoblin, and then he hires the foreigner, right, to kill the Hobgoblin, right, Ned Leeds. So he assumes the Hobgoblin identity after Ned Leeds is murdered, right? Because there's no Hobgoblin, right, after Ned Leeds is murdered. And then Roderick Kingsley, right, he basically retires. So he assumes the Hobgoblin identity, right, Jason Macendale. This is my opinion a little bit. He kind of tarnishes a lot the Hobgoblin legacy just because of how he was introduced very weakly. He hires someone else. He can't kill Ned Leeds himself. He can't battle Ned Leeds himself, right? And then he just takes the equipment, the Hobgoblin equipment, right? He doesn't even earn the title. He just steals the title. And then we're going to see, right, he's constantly defeated by Spider-Man. He almost never is a worthy adversary to him. Okay? Alright. Here are kind of the key issues associated with Jason Macendale Hobgoblin. His first appearance, right, as Jack-o'-lantern and Jason Macendale, Machine Man number 19. His first battle with Spider-Man, right, would be Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man 56. His first appearance as the Hobgoblin, Amazing Spider-Man 289, and then some of his origin is actually retold in different issues, but I think Web of Spider-Man 48 kind of gives us a nice kind of origin of Jason Macendale. Right? We would get more information on him later issues of Web of Spider-Man, but I think that's a good starting point. Right? So Jason Macendale, I've already mentioned, right? He's a constant failure. He's constantly defeated by Spider-Man, right? He's unable to secure the Golem Serum, right? Gain that superhuman strength, which, you know, that superhuman strength is one of the reasons that Hobgoblin is such an adversary, right? The Goblins are such an adversary to Spider-Man. So he's badly defeated by Green Goblin, the Harry Osborn Green Goblin and Spider-Man. So he's so badly defeated that he eventually decides to sell his soul for power to the demon, right? The Demon Lord, right? This is during the Infernal storyline. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Neasterk. So he tries to sell his soul, right? His soul is basically worthless to the demon, but the demon still gives him superhuman strength, right? Endurance and speed. But, little caveat, right? He also is possessed by a demon, right? Who eventually separates from Jason Macendale, right? That demon becomes a Demo-Goblin later. Okay, so this is basically, you know, Jason Macendale trying to get a power-up, right? So this demonic power-up. So he eventually, right, he becomes this demonic Hobgoblin, right? This is in Spectacular Spider-Man, right? He's created by Sal Buscema, right? Jerry Conway. And here's some kind of the demonic Hobgoblin, Demo-Goblin, who he'll eventually become. Kind of key issues in books. So Spectacular Spider-Man number 147 is when we first see the demonic Hobgoblin. Demo-Goblin separates from Jason Macendale in issue of Web of Spider-Man, right? Number 86. And then the death of Demo-Goblin, right? Jason Macendale kills Demo-Goblin in Spider-Man number 48. Okay. So after Jason Macendale separates himself from the demon, right? Or the demon separates itself from Jason Macendale. He tries to be a worthy adversary to Spider-Man. He tries you know, to get that Kraven the Hunter kind of strength, right, in Spider-Man 47. Retraining, right, as a mercenary, Web of Spider-Man 93. And then the cybernetic implants of Spider-Man 68. So, and again, he's constantly defeated, right, in all these books, and on the run of Spider-Man books. So, you know, Roderick Kingsley is unhappy how his legacy as a Hobgoblin is being tarnished, right? And then Jason Macendale, you know, he's worried that he might be exposed by Jason Macendale because he's talking so much. So Roderick Kingsley actually returns in Spider-Man Hobgoblin Lives #1 and kills Jason Macendale, right? So that's one of the reasons I included this in the list, right? Because remember, once Ned Leeds was retired and, well, killed, right? Roderick Kingsley kind of retires from the Hobgoblin role. Okay. All right. And then our last main Hobgoblin is Phil Urich. Okay, the Urich, I should say, Hobgoblin, right? The 5th Hobgoblin. So he's kind of a former reporter, right? Who tries to follow in the steps of his uncle Ben Urich, right? It should say reporter there, little typo. He later on becomes the heroic version of the Green Goblin, right? He has this. So the Green Goblin, just as like Norman Osborn with superhuman strength, he does have some extra powers, right? So he's a little bit more powerful in terms of a Green Goblin. Okay. He has this obsession to try to impress Nora Winters. Okay. So later on in the Amazing Spider-Man, he actually kills Daniel Kingsley, right? Daniel Kingsley is the brother to Roderick Kingsley. Okay, so I kind of put that image here. And then he assumes the Hobgoblin identity. Okay, so he was kind of investigating the Goblin layers, and he runs into Daniel Kingsley. Actually takes his head off, Daniel Kingsley. Okay, so he becomes the 5th Hobgoblin. He would later run into the 1st Hobgoblin, right? Roderick Kingsley returns, right? And he would later work for the Kingpin, right? And he hears some of the key issues. No particular order. So the first 2 books where he appears, right, Phil Urich would be Web of Spider-Man 125, and then the Green Goblin #1. Okay, his first appearance as the Hobgoblin would be Amazing Spider-Man 649, and then Norman Osborn eventually kills him, right? Very gruesome death. He's eventually killed, Phil Urich, right? And that would be Amazing Spider-Man 797. Okay, Urich goes on to assume different identities, like the Goblin Knight, etc. I did not include that, right? Because that's not relevant to the Hobgoblin. Okay. Right. And currently, right, Roderick Kingsley has returned as the Hobgoblin. Okay. All right, so let's go down a little bit. And then just general reading recommendations, right? Anybody wants to learn more, right? Origin of the Hobgoblin, I think, is a great trade paperback. It's a bit pricey, so I would say we could find it at the library used. And then the Spider-Man Hobgoblin Lives, right? I think are 2 great access points to kind of learn a lot about the Hobgoblin. And that is it. Okay, so hopefully that was informative. Okay, let me know if you have any questions and comments too. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Hopefully that clarified a little bit the Hobgoblin. Obviously there's other iterations of the character. I did not go over those, right? Right, there's sometimes characters who appear as the Hobgoblin like for 1 issue, 1 panel, right? So I did not include those, right? Deadpool, right? People don't know, most people don't know this, right? But he was actually the Hobgoblin for like a hot second. Okay, right, but I didn't include him in this video. Alright guys, so hopefully you enjoy that. As always, I thank you for watching. Okay, please consider, liking, subscribing. Hopefully you guys are liking this type of content. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Be well.